Welcome to Shorty SuperCoach. Going to take a look at every relevant defender in a moment. I think these videos are pretty cool because I reckon most of the time people ask questions about individual players to their side, but they're not always the general broad ones, so it's tough to get around to it. So what do I mean by relevant players? I'll go through all the defenders in a minute that are above rookie price, and if they're in 3% sides or more, I'll give you a little bit of a talk about them. Some might be 10 seconds. Others I might spend a little bit more time on. Patreon, obviously, give that a little shout out. Getting a few on board, which is awesome. So thanks to everyone who's done that. I'm just going to go through from the top price range to the bottom and just discuss a few of the guys. And hopefully that can, give you an idea of what I think about someone who's in your side, because it's pretty tough. You can't do every player profile that you would like to do, and you can't answer all the questions and those sort of things. So this should hopefully give you, even if it's just a snippet or a sentence, about some relevant guys. So, and I will timestamp it. So if you're interested in a couple of blokes, you can go bang and look at them directly. So first off, Lloyd. He's in 26% of sides, very popular. And I don't doubt his scoring at all. I think he's going to score very, very well and very likely to average 100 again. But I just think he's a bit overpriced, to be honest. He's obviously very popular, but I just feel the way he ended last year gives me the slightest bit of concern. It's not the disastrous end of the season. He was consistent, had quite a lot of 80s and 90s, but I just reckon for $590K, I feel like we've got some better options that are 50 or 60K less. So that's just why I left him out of my side. But still, if you just want to lock him in and not bother about getting him in later, fair enough. He's going to be one of the top scorers again. Bachar Houli, 10% of sides. And it's a big no for me. I think he's getting towards the twilight stages of his career. I know he had a bit of a calf concern, I think it was, in the pre-season. So he's going to have games where he scores very well and he'll probably average reasonable. But I reckon there's some better players that are probably posing a better case to start with. And obviously we'll look at them as we go through. But even just Jaden Short coming back slightly changes the dynamic just a touch. But it's more his body that I'm concerned about, to be honest. Shannon Hurn, I'm surprised he's in 8% of sides, to be honest. Look, he marks the ball plenty of times. He kicks long and he kicks accurately. He's going to score well, but look, he hasn't had a stack of averages of premium nature. And I just think, you're probably paying top dollar for him, I reckon. So I just don't really like paying absolute top dollar for guys who haven't done it year on year. I just want to quickly have a look. Because I reckon he might have had two decent averages. We're not going to bother about waiting for that. I'm hot spotting here, so anyway, when that loads, we might get back to it, but we'll keep moving. Zac Williams, massive, massive fan, 13% of size. The one query is, where the hell's he been? It took me ages to even realise that he was injured. Like, I saw he wasn't getting selected, but just even Googling, there's not like a clear reason why he's out. But I know he is recovering from a bit of an injury, which I don't like starting guys that are, starting their campaign injured. I'm presuming he'll be right for round one. I really haven't heard stacks, but he's probably touch and go. So there's obviously quite a few teams that are running with him. If he is fully fit, he's one of the best defenders we can select. He's dashing, he's very damaging, racks up a lot of the ball. So certainly a fully fit Williams, you can play with confidence, but I just like to see some pre-season form to get a bit of gauge. If we just sort of manoeuvre down to Caleb Daniel there, and obviously you can see he's in my side. I've done a player profile on him. I've talked him up quite a bit, to be honest, this pre-season. I just think he's a really safe pick, and he's sort of an example of a guy who is 40 or 50K cheaper than some of these other fellas I spoke about initially. And I just think he's going to rack them up. All right, his pre-season form wasn't amazing, but that's an example of, he's a premium. Let's not get too carried away with what he does in the Marsh Community Series. I really like him. He's the go-to guy out of the back line for the Dogs, just a real reliable player. He won't give you too many 140s like, maybe a Lloyd will, but I think he's going to be just as consistent. Lloyd is very, very consistent. I think Daniel will be very similar. He'll average high 90s for sure. And before, he copped a few injuries last year too. He was flying even more so than that 99. So I'm feeling really confident with that selection. Tom Stewart, he's in 8% of sides. And look, I don't know. I'm a Cats man, obviously, but I'm not too sure. I think he's a very good player, but I reckon high 90s is about his limit. I reckon that's about his max. I know he had a semi-interrupted preseason as well, but look, he does intercept the ball beautifully. He racks up the kicks, so many kick-ins and so many marks and then kicks from the back pocket after the kick-in. He gets so much of that ball. He's going to be very consistent. I'm just not too sure. If you look at his scores from last year, I would imagine a lot were between 90 and 115, which you can't complain about. But similar to Hurn, I reckon we're paying about top dollar, but he's going to be a quality player. So he's not for me to start with, but he might be in my side at some stage of the season. Rampy's just in the 1% of sides. Laird, definitely worth talking about, 20% of sides. Had a really good last practice game and won quite a few people over. And he'll be looking to bounce back, just like many of the Crows will be. Obviously, last year was a very tough year for them, and Laird was similar. He struggled at times, just didn't find that ceiling. Like, he just didn't find as many 35 touches, 120-plus scores. Consistent, nice, polite scores, but he just didn't give us the big ones that saw him average about 108 not too long ago. So you could argue he's a bit underpriced. I've considered strongly starting with him at times. Just hasn't happened. So I think he's a pretty good selection, and I'm not surprised he's in so many sides. He's well priced and a proven scorer. We'll just continue on down from a couple. Luke Ryan, he's in 3% of teams and a pretty good option too, I reckon. He's quite unique. There is a bit of change and movement in the Dockers backline with injuries and things like that, but his role doesn't seem to have changed at all. He looks as if he's going to continue to play a really strong marking game and take kick-ins. From what I can gather, he's going to be real reliable. And again, you could probably expect a similar average. I would imagine what people are just a little bit cautious about is the key defender element. We have seen key types average in the 90s and then drop back down. Rance, Hurley, Thompson come to mind as well. So that might be just something that people are concerned about and holding back. But I reckon the fact he's in WA too, a lot of us Victorians probably just haven't seen him play as much as well. He'd probably be in a lot more sides if he was over in Victoria. So I think you can definitely justify his selection, but he just wasn't for me on this occasion. But a man who was definitely for me was James Sicily. I'm a massive fan. He's been in my side from day dot, 19% of teams, and fair enough. He'll rack them up. He'll continue to just do what he does. Finds the intercept possessions really well, damaging kick, and Hawthorn just love to play through him. I think the fact that last year he did play forward at times and at times had to play a bit taller than he would have liked. But I think they've got Frost in, who'll play down the back half, McAvoy also, and in attack, Patton comes to the side and Lewis will continue to develop. I don't see Sicily taking on too much responsibility defensively. I think he'll be a real weapon out of the back line and very keen to see him score a few points for Shorty Superstars. Just scrolling through a little bit more down to Dan Houston, and he's one of the more popular ones as well. 24% of sides. And I thought there might have been a slight drop-off after he didn't score as well in the last Pracky game, but there were reasons for that. He didn't play a full game, copped a bit of a knock. So I'm glad people have stuck with him, because I reckon any time that we can get a player in our back line that's going to play pure mid is fantastic. He looks to be finding the ball really well, starting in a lot of centre bounces for Port Adelaide, one of the main men in there. And it's hard to argue with that price. We saw a glimpse of it late last year, and we've been told by the club, we've seen in the practice games, he's a midfielder. So it's very tough to argue. Certainly justifies that ownership for sure. Jack Crisp is a bit of a unique one, and I just don't feel he can go to be a top 6 defender. I think he's just forever in that category of very, very good player and scores very well. He'll have those games where he just scores 130, racks them up off the half-back line, but I just think he throws in a few more non-premium scores that just drag that average down a touch. I think to start with him would be a bit of a risk. I know he had a good pracky game. Maybe that's why some people are jumping on board that. But, he's not for me. And I'm surprised he's in 8% of sides, to be honest. But that's fair enough. Brodie Smith, a real smoky of the last week. I really like this. I don't think we're going any good there loading. But Brodie Smith, playing midfield, showed what he could do. The question was always going to be at Adelaide, what are they doing with their midfield? They want to inject some pace. They want a different look in there. Who's it going to be? And it's going to be Brodie Smith. 7% of sides. He's scored well before. We know what a beautiful kick he is. Loves to get on the outside and damage the opposition with his boot. He's a tempter. He's an absolute tempter. I'm not going to lie. But I'm pretty set with my structure and how I'm looking. I've got a few, I've got Brayshaw. I've got Stephen. I've got Houston. Couple of English as well. Couple of semi-risk players, so I probably wouldn't throw him in there, but he has been on my mind, no doubt about it, so I can understand the thinking there. Lachie Weller, he's only won 1% of sides, but I'm surprised by that. Thought he might have been a bit more. Wouldn't surprise me. I'm not going to endorse to pick him straight off the top, but wouldn't surprise me if he had a pretty reasonable season and averaged really well. So we moved down. Jordan Dawson, 7% of sides. There was a fair bit of talk about him leading into the pre-season, and he probably just didn't deliver, I don't reckon. Oh, what have I done here? Oh, Jesus, me and my technology skills. There we go. Probably just didn't deliver, particularly in that second pracky game. I just didn't see much at all. I was watching that game, and I just got nothing from him. So some people might see a bit more or have a bit more faith than I do in him. But, yeah, I just think it's too risky. He's not that cheap, and he's got to have to be a keeper. And, I just spoke about Smith and Houston. I think they're better options for only slightly more expensive coin. As we continue on down, Harris Andrews, got no idea why he is in 3% of sides. Is that a bit of the old Matthew Scarlett back when you don't know too much about SuperCoach and you pick Scarlett? I remember my first SuperCoach side, I picked Dale Morris. Dale Morris. I was like, oh, Morris is a gun. I love him. And then I realised how the whole bloody system worked. I was a young fella there who knew nothing about the game, but get Andrews out of your side. He's not cheap enough, and he's not going to be a keeper. Same can be said with Saad. Are we getting sucked into his run and carry? The Dons are playing an attractive brand of footy, dashing and has a great highlights reel. That's all true, but it doesn't equate to consistent scores. It's a no from me. Continuing on down. Here's the big one, 51% of sides, Sam Docherty. And he has left my team. I know he scored 105, I know, but I'm going out on a bit of a limb here. I didn't like what I saw. The patterns of play, there's a lot going on with Simpson and Newman. I don't know. I wasn't convinced. He didn't have that same look about him. Statistically, the stat sheet read really well. But there was just something that didn't light my fire. And as I discussed in my team video, you can check that one out I did a few days ago, as to why I need to free up some coin. But, yeah, he made way. If he comes out and scores 110, 120 in the first 2 weeks, all right, maybe I'm going to just have to eat my words and do something about it and get him in. But at the moment, I just wasn't won over with starting him. And it worked better for the rest of my team to not. So that's how I came to that conclusion. totally understand if you would start with him. Totally understand. I did say after his first game, which wasn't overly encouraging, I just wanted to see something, and I didn't see what I needed to see. So that's all with that one. As we just continue on down the list, and hopefully I've nailed off on a couple of players you're interested in here. I've probably scrolled past a few that are super unique, but you can't talk about absolutely everyone, or we'll be here for a long time. Darcy Moore, same category as Andrews. Shouldn't be in your sides. Was good for us last year. Shouldn't be in our teams this year. Wayne Milera, touched on him. Loved him. Pracky game 1. Needed to encourage us. Second up. Didn't. Smith seems to have taken the limelight. Has to go. Hunter Clark, similar can be said for him. A bloke that we need to see more midfield time from, and we needed to be won over. He needed to show us exactly what he was going to produce in one of the preseason games, and we really didn't see it consistently in either. So you've just got to jump ship. Super talented, massive prospect, could still explode, but you couldn't start with him. Then we've got, starts to drop off, obviously, as we go through absolute awkward mid-price territory. A whole lot of 0% here. James Aish, 2% of sides. And I've seen in the comments people asking about Aish. No, let's not select him. Yes, he played some good footy in the practice games. Yes, he might see a bit more time around the ball at the Dockers. But no. Let's not select him. Just, talk amongst yourselves, people, as I find someone a little more relevant to talk about. Grant Birchall is obviously a guy, as you can see, 7% of sides has really grabbed the attention of a few, but not for me at all. He's playing a good role and a leadership role, but I just can't see his body holding up, and he's not that cheap to just say you've got to lock him in for what I think he'll score. He's probably, he's in those latter stages of his career. I don't think he's a lock for every week. I'm sure they'll rest him at times, and he's not that dashing defender that he once was. He'll be reliable, and he'll dish up some solid scores, but there are better options not too much further down that we'll discuss in a second. But yeah, it's a no from me for Birchall. And one of those guys is definitely Lukosius. He's in 7% of sides, as we can see there. And, he did feature in my team fleetingly before I changed to Roberton, who's a man we'll discuss in a second. But he could be anything. He looks like he's going to play an intercepting defender role. He's a very, very nice kick. Rates elite in the kicking department. Played a bit of this footy late last year. Had some good signs. Some, he warmed into the role. Some scores and weeks were better than others. But I really do think he will absolutely boost his average. It was 50-odd last year. I can see that pushing 80. But there is a bit of risk factor because he is so young and he's at the Gold Coast, and there's nothing to say that he couldn't get flicked forward either. If they get a couple of injuries or they want to shake it up and he gets flicked forward and he averages, as a forward, he was sort of averaging around your 40 to 60 mark. So we need him playing that role. Just a touch risky for me. But the proposition is fantastic. He's a very exciting player, and even still, I'm a touch tempted. I can't deny it. Tom Doedee, I don't think we even saw anything from him through the pre-season. It's got to be a no. He's still in 9% of sides. He's got the little mark there. Expected to return rounds 1 or 2. So a bloke like him had to get some pre-season into him, and he didn't. So we've just got to put a line through him. That's for sure. And there's Roberton, 32% of sides. Look, I haven't been an enormous fan of this selection for the most part of the pre-season, but just the way my side fell and the cookie crumbled in a way that I needed a guy in that sort of price range. I had Lukosius, then I needed to get Zerk Thatcher. I needed about 20k, so I went to Roberton because I thought probably going to do a similar output and probably more reliable. Yes, he's got obviously some health issues. Footy is, not as important as that. So hopefully that's all going well. But in terms of the football side of things, he made a solid return. And I just think under the roof, the Saints play a stack of footy there early. He's going to mop up plenty of effective kicks and take plenty of uncontested marks. I don't see him averaging that 90 that he did not too long ago, but I do see him returning somewhere in the 80s. Might be early 70s at the start of the season, but as he warms into it, I reckon we can expect somewhere in the 80s. But at that price, he's definitely going to make coin. If he stays out in the park, he justifies his selection. So, yeah, he just picked himself for me in the end. Isaac Cumming's a bloke that I really like. I saw him play some really good footy through the pre-season. Both Pracky games were really impressive. A couple of quality scores. My one question mark would be they were done without Zac Williams. How does that sort of affect him? I'm not too sure. Probably don't know the Giants' makeup well enough to know exactly. Honestly, I hadn't really seen him play much at all before I deliberately started focusing on him in the pre-season. So, but his scores look good. Again, he's one of those cheap style options that should make coin. A bit more risk given his age, given his inequality side, given there's some returning star players for the Giants. Makes some uncertainty there. And I reckon we've just about covered it off. Obviously, I don't want to talk about George Holland-Smith. Get rid of him. I don't know why he's in 3% of sides. John Noble, of course. Yeah, he's a defender forward. No, he's not. Sorry, just a defender. What am I doing? Who am I thinking of? I'm thinking of someone else. But Noble, absolutely worth talking about. Totally forgot that I was about to scroll past him. But Langers is a massive fan of him. He's in 12% of sides. And it's hard to argue because he wins a lot of uncontested footy, heaps of handball receives throughout the practice games. And he did it last year too. His kicking let him down last year, but he finds the ball pretty easily. He seems to always get 18, 19, 22, 23 touches. And at that price, if that's his role, Collingwood are looking to play through him a bit more. Again, like the other few guys I mentioned, he's definitely going to make some good coin. So, and he's super cheap. I'm not sure how it all looks when Treloar and Adams come back and Collingwood are a strong side, but I think he looks to have cemented his spot on the half-back line. It's tough to argue with what he's put forward. He was drafted in the mid-season last year and has really showed some great signs. Seems to be a natural ball winner. Polish up on his kicking, and he should average a solid 70 at least. So it's hard to argue with that. But yeah, look, obviously Aish is there, and Stephen Hill shouldn't be in 34% of sides now with his quad. But we're working into the rookies. Zerk Thatcher, definitely think you should get on board him. Guaranteed to play, and a known interceptor at VFL level, and showed it in the Pracky game. But look, we're working into the rookies now, and I don't want to touch on them until we see some teams. So thanks heaps for joining me. I hope this has provided you with some good insight, and hopefully I've touched on a couple of players that you haven't thought or heard my thoughts on yet, and were keen to hear what I thought. So I try to do these videos. I'll have one for the mids, the rucks, the forwards. I find it's just the best one-stop shop sort of way to cover off on everyone. So you do your best to give your thoughts on every player that most people are thinking about. So hopefully I've done that. Hopefully you've enjoyed it. And I'll be back soon for another video. Cheers.